I'll take 10 trucks. The salesmen laugh until they see how much is in the bag. Arthur Miller never imagined that one day he would be treated like a beggar at a dealership where he had once been a respected customer. After years of saving penny by penny, collecting every coin he could, he finally had the money needed to fulfill the dream he had promised his late wife. It was when he entered the truck dealership on Main Street that 3 elegant salesmen began to laugh loudly upon seeing him. "Well, look who showed up here," said Brandon, the tallest of the 3, pointing at Arthur with disdain. "You must be lost, old man. The used clothing store is 3 blocks that way." "Or maybe he came to beg for change," added Justin, the second salesman, while adjusting his expensive tie. "You can read, right? This is a dealership, not a shelter." "Maybe he wants to clean the truck windshields for a few coins," said Tyler, the third, provoking more laughter among his colleagues. Arthur remained silent, holding his worn bag firmly against his chest. His hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from a mix of nervousness and indignation. His brown eyes, marked by time and suffering, filled with restrained tears. "I would like to speak with someone about purchasing trucks," he said, in a low but firm voice. The 3 salesmen burst into even louder laughter. Other customers in the store stopped to watch the scene, some smiling cruelly, others seeming uncomfortable with the situation. "Purchasing trucks?" Brandon wiped tears from laughing so hard. "My friend, do you have any idea how much a truck costs? Probably more than you'll earn in your entire lifetime." "Let me guess," Justin approached with an air of superiority. "You want to finance it over 200 payments with no down payment, or are you going to pay with bottle caps? How many do you want to buy? 5? 10? Tyler clapped his hands. He was so amused. "Oh, I imagine it's just one, right? And used. Very used." Arthur took a deep breath. For 5 long years he had prepared for this moment, working from sunup to sundown, denying himself any small pleasure, religiously saving every dollar he could. He had faced humiliation in various jobs, carried loads until his back ached, sold sweets on the street in rain and scorching sun. All for a dream, a promise made at the hospital bedside of the woman he loved more than life itself. "I'll take 10 trucks," he said, raising his head with dignity. "In cash." The silence that followed was deafening. The 3 salesmen stopped laughing immediately, looking at each other with expressions of disbelief. The customers around also ceased their conversations. All eyes turned to this simple man who had just made an impossible statement. "Sorry." "What did you say?" Brandon stammered, still processing the words. 10 trucks, in cash," repeated Arthur, placing the bag on the sales counter. "I have the money here. Look, old man." Justin tried to maintain a mocking tone but could no longer hide the uncertainty in his voice. 10 trucks are over $2 million. Do you have any idea about that?" "Yes, I do," Arthur replied calmly. "And I have the money." Tyler gave a nervous chuckle. "Oh, I get it. It's a prank, right? Is there a hidden camera here?" But Arthur did not smile. With deliberate movements, he opened the zipper of the worn bag. The sound of metal sliding echoed through the silence of the dealership. Slowly he began to remove bundles and more bundles of money, stacking them carefully on the counter. $50 and $100 bills, organized in perfect stacks, began to accumulate. 1 stack, 2, 5, 10. The characteristic scent of paper money spread through the air. The 3 salesmen stood gaping, their eyes glued to the amount that grew with each second. "My goodness," whispered a lady watching from afar. Brandon swallowed hard, his face pale. You really have that money?" "Every penny was earned honestly," said Arthur, continuing to pull bundles from the backpack. 5 years of saving, 5 years stashing away every dollar I could." Justin tried to regain his composure. But where did so much money come from? "I worked," interrupted Arthur firmly. "Bricklayer, painter, street vendor, porter, janitor. Any honest work that came up, I took it. Sometimes I worked 3 shifts in the same day." The last bundle came out of the backpack, completing an impressive amount of money on the counter. Arthur closed the empty backpack and looked directly at the 3 men who minutes before had been mocking him. "Now," he said in a calm but determined voice, "can someone assist me with respect, or do I need to find another dealership?" An awkward silence hung in the air. The three salesmen exchanged glances, clearly unsure how to react to the situation. The mockery had turned to shame, and the discomfort was visible on their faces. It was then that a woman's voice broke the tense silence. "Excuse me. Can someone explain what's happening here?" Everyone turned to see Dorothy Bennett, a 62-year-old lady with graying hair in a bun, wearing the dealership's cleaning uniform. She walked toward the group with a broom in hand, but her eyes were fixed on Arthur with a growing expression of recognition. "It can't be," she murmured, moving closer. "Mr. Arthur?" Arthur turned to her, and his eyes lit up with a flash of relief upon seeing a familiar, friendly face. "Mrs. Dorothy," he said with a small smile, "it's good to see you here." "My God, it really is you," she exclaimed, approaching with genuine joy. "It's been so long. How are you?" Brandon cleared his throat, visibly annoyed by the interruption. "Excuse me, Mrs. Dorothy, but we're in an important negotiation here." "Negotiation?" she laughed with disbelief. "I saw you three laughing and mocking this man when he walked in. Is that negotiation?" We didn't know he—" Justin stammered, gesturing toward the money on the counter. "Didn't know what?" Dorothy crossed her arms. "That he had money? So you only assist well-dressed customers? Is that how you do business?" Tyler tried to defend himself. "Mrs. Dorothy, you don't understand. He came in here looking—" "Looking what? Poor?" She cut him off sharply. "And what does that matter if he has the money to buy?" Arthur placed a hand on Dorothy's arm in a gentle gesture. "It's all right, Mrs. Dorothy. No need to get upset." "It is not all right," she retorted indignantly. "These rude boys were humiliating you, and that's not right." The tension in the air was palpable. Other dealership employees began to approach, curious about the commotion. Among them was Howard Harper, the general manager, a middle-aged man who immediately sensed something serious was happening. "What's the problem here?" asked Howard, looking alternately at the nervous salesman, the money on the counter, and the simple man at the center of it all. "The problem," said Dorothy before anyone could answer, "is that your salesman spent the last 10 minutes humiliating a customer who came here to buy 10 trucks in cash." Howard's eyes widened, first looking at the money, then at Arthur. 10 trucks? In cash?" "That's right," confirmed Arthur. "But after the treatment I received, I'm not sure I still want to do business here." The manager immediately understood the gravity of the situation. A sale of 10 trucks would be one of the biggest of the year, and its salespeople had nearly ruined everything with prejudice and arrogance. "Sir," he respectfully extended his hand. "Arthur Miller," he replied, shaking the offered hand. "Mr. Arthur, on behalf of the dealership, I sincerely apologize for the inappropriate treatment you received. This is unacceptable and does not represent our company's values." Brandon, Justin, and Tyler remained silent, clearly embarrassed and worried about the possible consequences of their attitude. "Mrs. Dorothy," continued Howard, "do you know Mr. Arthur?" "Yes, I do," she answered with pride. "This man here used to own one of the largest trucking companies in the region. Miller Logistics was known throughout the city for its quality and honesty." A murmur of surprise went through those present. Arthur lowered his eyes, clearly uncomfortable with the attention. "What happened to your company, Mr. Arthur?" asked Howard with respectful curiosity. Arthur sighed deeply, painful memories resurfacing. "I trusted partners who didn't deserve my trust. They forged documents, embezzled money, and by the time I found out, it was too late. I lost everything. The company, the house, the trucks, even the personal savings that had been used as collateral." "How awful," murmured a customer who was following the conversation. "But how long ago was that?" asked Howard. 5 years, replied Arthur. 5 years ago, I had 63 employees and a fleet of 40 trucks. Overnight, I found myself with nothing. Dorothy shook her head sadly. And his wife, Mrs. Martha, fell ill soon after. The grief was so great that she developed heart problems. "She passed away last year," said Arthur, his voice choked. "In the hospital, she made me promise one thing." Everyone waited in respectful silence. "Our rural community, where we live now, doesn't have adequate transportation to take the small farmers' produce to the city market. Many families lose their harvests because they can't transport it in time. Martha asked me to find a way to help these people." "And you decided to buy trucks for that?" asked Howard, impressed. "I promised her I would make it happen." Arthur nodded. "Since then I work from sunup to sundown, in any honest job that comes up, saving every penny to buy these trucks." The emotion was visible on everyone's faces. Even Brandon, Justin, and Tyler seemed genuinely moved by the story. "5 years of saving," continued Arthur. "Sleeping little, eating little, denying myself any small luxury, all to honor the promise I made to my wife." "What do you work as now?" asked a lady who was watching everything with tears in her eyes. "Whatever comes up," he replied simply. "Monday, Wednesday, and Friday I work as a bricklayer on a school construction site. Tuesday and Thursday I sell sweets I make myself in the central square. Saturday and Sunday I load goods at the city market." "And you managed to save over $2 million like that?" Justin asked, genuinely impressed. $2,300,050, said Arthur with precision. "Every bill here represents hours of work, sweat, and often hunger, because I preferred to save my lunch money. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out." Now continuing, a reverent silence filled the room. The transformation in everyone's attitude was remarkable. What had begun as mockery had become admiration and respect. "Mr. Arthur," said Howard, "it will be an honor to do business with you. I'll personally take care of your purchase and ensure you receive the best possible service." "Thank you," replied Arthur, "but there's a condition." "What is it?" asked the manager. "I want these 3 young men," he pointed to Brandon, Justin, and Tyler, "to be involved in the sale. They taught me an important lesson today." The 3 salesmen looked at each other surprised. "What lesson?" asked Brandon timidly. "That we shouldn't judge people by their appearance," said Arthur. "You judged me and treated me poorly because I was dressed simply. But you didn't know these are the only good clothes I have, that I've worn the same shirt for 3 years because every extra dollar goes into savings." Justin lowered his head, visibly ashamed. "Mr. Arthur, we apologize. What we did was unforgivable." "Apology accepted," said Arthur. "But I want you to learn from this. Next time someone different walks in here, remember today." Tyler stepped closer, his eyes moist. "You're right. We were prejudiced and cruel. We don't deserve your consideration." "Everyone deserves a second chance," said Arthur wisely. "I know well what it's like to be judged and discredited. That's why I don't want you to go through what I went through." Howard watched the scene with growing admiration. "Mr. Arthur, you are an example of character. Now let's take care of your purchase." "What kind of trucks do you need?" "Medium trucks, suitable for transporting agricultural products," explained Arthur. "Nothing too large, but with good carrying capacity and fuel efficient." "We have excellent options," said Howard. "Brandon, bring the catalogs for the medium models." Brandon quickly left to fetch the materials, clearly eager to redeem himself. Meanwhile, Dorothy approached Arthur with a warm smile. "Mr. Arthur, may I ask a personal question?" "Of course, Mrs. Dorothy." "Did you ever think of giving up in all these hard years? Did you never feel like abandoning everything?" Arthur smiled melancholically. "Many times, Mrs. Dorothy, especially in the first months after Martha passed. There were nights I cried from exhaustion and despair, thinking it was impossible to save so much money." "And what made you keep going?" "The promise," he replied without hesitation. "And the families in our community. I saw children in need because their parents couldn't sell their produce on time. I saw honest, hard-working people losing their harvests due to a lack of adequate transport." A woman who was listening to the conversation approached. "Excuse me, my name is Natalie. I'm a journalist with the local paper. May I ask a few questions about your story?" Arthur seemed uncomfortable. "I don't want to be in the papers. I didn't do this for recognition." "But your story could inspire others," insisted Natalie. "Show that it's possible to overcome difficulties with work and determination." "Please no," said Arthur firmly. "I just want to buy my trucks and go back home." Natalie respected the request but continued observing, clearly moved by the man's humility. Brandon returned with the catalogues and began showing the available options. His attitude was completely different, respectful, attentive, almost reverent. "This one is our best-selling model for agricultural transport," he explained, showing the specifications. "It has good load capacity and is very economical." Arthur carefully examined the information, asking technical questions that demonstrated his deep knowledge of trucks. It was evident his experience as a fleet owner was still present. "Is the suspension suitable for dirt roads?" he asked. "Yes, sir," replied Brandon. "This model was specifically designed for rural conditions." "And the warranty?" 3 years for the engine and transmission, 1 year for the rest," informed Justin, who had also joined the presentation. Arthur nodded, satisfied. "I'll take these 10 trucks then." "Perfect," said Howard. "Now we need to take care of the documentation. Do you have a registered company?" "No," admitted Arthur. "I'm going to buy them as an individual." "That might complicate the paperwork a bit, but it's not a problem," said the manager. "We'll arrange everything." That's when the first obstacle appeared. The employee responsible for the documentation, Brenda, appeared with a worried expression. "Howard, we have a problem," she said discreetly. "For a cash purchase of this amount, we need specific documentation about the origin of the funds." Arthur heard and approached. "What kind of documentation?" "Proof of income, tax return statements, bank statements," explained Brenda. "It's a legal requirement for cash transactions above $100,000. Arthur's face paled. I work freelance. I don't have a formal employment contract anywhere." "And your tax return statements?" "I file a simplified return. I've never had enough income to need to prove much," he admitted, clearly worried. Howard realized the problem. "Mr. Arthur, without this documentation, we cannot process the sale." "But the money is honest," protested Arthur. "Every penny was earned with my sweat." "We believe you," said Howard, "but the law is clear. We need proof." Arthur felt the world crumbling around him. After 5 years of sacrifice, he was so close to realizing his dream, and now another obstacle, seemingly insurmountable, had appeared. "What can I do?" he asked, his voice trembling with despair. Dorothy, who had watched everything, approached. "Mr. Arthur, do you remember that I worked at your logistics company years ago?" "Yes, I remember. You were in accounting." "That's right, and I kept some newspaper clippings from that time," she said with a hopeful smile. "Clippings about Miller Logistics, about your reputation, about how well you treated your employees." "Can that help?" asked Arthur. Brenda shook her head. "It could be a start. At least it proves you had a legitimate business in the past." "I have those clippings at home," said Dorothy. "I can go get them right now." "Please, Mrs. Dorothy," implored Arthur. "It would be a great help." Dorothy hurried out, leaving everyone waiting anxiously. During her absence, more people approached, curious about the unusual commotion at the dealership. Among them was a gentleman of about 70, elegantly dressed, who observed everything with interest. He approached Arthur. "Excuse me, I heard part of the conversation. My name is Anthony Sterling. I'm retired from the banking system," he said, extending his hand. "Arthur Miller," he replied, shaking the offered hand. "May I ask you a question? Was all this money really saved over 5 years?" "Every bill," confirmed Arthur, "working 3 different jobs sometimes." Anthony nodded with approval. "It's admirable, very admirable. May I ask why you didn't put the money in a bank?" "Because—" Arthur hesitated, seeming embarrassed. "Because I was afraid some bureaucratic problem would make me lose everything again. After what happened to my company, I developed a distrust of any official system." "I understand perfectly," said Anthony with understanding. "After a betrayal like the one you suffered, it's natural to develop that caution." "You know my story?" "No. But I recognize the signs," explained Anthony. "I worked 40 years in the financial system. I saw many honest people harmed by dishonest partners. It's more common than you think." At that moment, Dorothy returned with a folder full of newspaper clippings yellowed with time. Her eyes shone with emotion. "I brought everything I had about you and your company," she said, placing the folder on the counter. Arthur opened the folder, and his eyes filled with tears. There were photographs of him inaugurating the company, clippings talking about the quality of Miller Logistics services, articles about his participation in community events. "My God," he murmured. "I had forgotten many of these things." Brenda examined the documents with interest. This is very good. It shows you had a solid and respected company, but we still need more documentation about your current income. Perhaps I can help with that, said Anthony. I have contacts in the banking system who can expedite a creditworthiness check. You would do that? Asked Arthur, surprised by the kindness of a stranger. With pleasure, replied Anthony. People like you deserve all the support possible. While Anthony made some calls, Arthur leafed through the clippings with nostalgia. One photo in particular caught his attention. It was him and Martha on the day the company opened, both young and full of dreams. She was so proud that day, he murmured, gently touching the photo. Natalie, the journalist, couldn't resist. What was your wife like? Arthur smiled tenderly. Martha was special. She was the one who encouraged me to open the trucking company, who stayed up late helping with the accounting, who knew every employee by name and always asked about their families. She must have suffered a lot when you lost everything, commented Dorothy with sorrow. She did, admitted Arthur, but she never blamed me. She always said we would rebuild everything somehow, that God would give us a new opportunity. And he did, observed Brandon, who was listening to the conversation. You are here about to realize an even bigger dream than you had before. Arthur looked at him with surprise. How so? Before you had a company to make money, explained Brandon. Now you'll have a company to help people. That's much nobler. The observation touched Arthur deeply, and he realized the young salesman had truly understood the meaning of his journey. Anthony returned from his calls with good news. I managed to expedite the process. An old colleague who works in banking supervision will do a swift verification. It should be ready in an hour. An hour? Asked Howard, impressed. It usually takes days. Well, let's just say your story touched some important people, smiled Anthony. We don't find someone with so much determination and honesty every day. As they waited, more people joined the group. Arthur's story was spreading quickly through the dealership, and employees and customers came to meet the man who had saved for 5 years to buy 10 trucks. Among the curious onlookers was Joanne, a woman of about 50, who approached with tears in her eyes. Mr. Arthur, she said timidly. Yes? My name is Joanne. I live in the Willow Creek community where you live now. My husband has a small tomato farm. Arthur recognized her immediately. Mrs. Joanne, you're here in the city. I came to sort out some problems at the bank, she explained. But what a coincidence to find you here. Not a coincidence, said Dorothy with a smile. Destiny. Is it true you're going to buy trucks to help our community? Asked Joanne, emotional. It's true, yes, confirmed Arthur. I promised Mrs. Martha I would find a way for you all to transport your harvests. Joanne began to cry. Mr. Arthur, you can't imagine what this means for us. My husband lost 3 harvests in the last 2 years because we couldn't get transportation in time. You won't miss any more, promised Arthur. But it must be costing you a fortune. The money doesn't matter, he said firmly. What matters is seeing families like yours prospering, children having food to eat, honest people being rewarded for hard work. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Brenda, who wore a radiant smile on her face. Mr. Arthur, we have good news. The verification was approved. You are cleared to make the purchase. A murmur of relief and joy swept through the group. Arthur closed his eyes for a moment, whispering a prayer of gratitude. So we can finalize the sale, he asked. Yes, we can, confirmed Howard. Let's prepare all the documentation. But when Brenda started to calculate the final amounts, she discovered another problem. Mr. Arthur, there's one more issue, she said hesitantly. His heart raced. What is it now? The 10 trucks cost exactly $2,200,015. But there are documentation fees, licensing, mandatory insurance. In total, it comes to $2,430,000. Arthur did the math quickly. He had $2,300,050. He was short $129,950. I don't have enough, he said, his voice cracking with disappointment. The silence that followed was painful. Everyone realized that after so many obstacles overcome, Arthur was hitting one more problem. "We can't discount the fees," explained Howard with regret. "They're government taxes. We can't change them." Arthur looked at the money on the counter, then at the compassionate faces around him. 5 years of dreaming seemed to be crumbling because of less than $130,000. "How much is missing?" asked Anthony. $129,950, replied Brenda. "I'll lend it," said Anthony immediately. "No," refused Arthur. "Thank you for the offer, but I can't accept. I already owe too many favors to generous people." "It's not a favor," insisted Anthony. "It's an investment in a just cause." "Even so, I can't accept." Arthur remained firm. It was then that Dorothy approached, taking a small savings passbook from her purse. "Mr. Arthur," she said with determination, "I have $60,000 saved. It's my emergency fund, but I can't think of a bigger emergency than this one. Mrs. Dorothy, I can't accept—" "You can, and you will accept," she interrupted him. "You gave work to my late husband for 8 years. You treated our family with respect and dignity. Now it's my turn to help." Brandon stepped forward, visibly moved. "Mr. Arthur, I have $30,000 saved. It's for a down payment on an apartment, but I can wait a little longer." "And I have $20,000, said Justin. "It was for a trip, but this cause is more important." "I can contribute $15,000, offered Tyler. "It's the least I can do after how I treated you." Arthur looked around, seeing generous and determined faces. Tears streamed freely down his face. "You can't do this," he said, his voice choked. "You can't give up your savings for my sake." "It's not for your sake," said Joanne, who had also taken some money from her purse. "It's for our community, it's for our children. It's for a better future for all of us. I have $15,000 here," she offered. "It's what I managed to save for emergencies." Others present began to speak up. The journalist Natalie offered $5,000. 2 customers who had watched the whole scene offered $3,000 each. Dealership employees pooled their money and offered another $4,000. In a few minutes, the voluntary contributions totaled exactly the $129,950 that were missing. Arthur was sobbing with emotion, unable to speak. He had never witnessed such generosity and solidarity in his life. I don't know what to say," he managed to murmur finally. "You don't need to say anything," said Dorothy, embracing him in a fatherly way. "You just need to realize your dream. Our dream. How will I ever pay you all back?" "With the fruits this initiative will bear," replied Anthony. "When you see families prospering, well-fed children, small producers managing to sell their harvests, you'll know we've all been paid back with interest." Howard, moved by the entire scene, made a decision. "Mr. Arthur, in recognition of your story and the generosity of everyone here, the dealership will cover the documentation fees. It's our contribution to this noble cause." "That's almost $20,000 in fees," observed Brenda. "It doesn't matter," said Howard. "Some deals are worth more than profit." Now there was more than enough money. Arthur could buy the 10 trucks and still have a reserve for fuel and initial maintenance. The paperwork was prepared quickly, with all the dealership employees working together to speed up the process. In 2 hours everything was ready. "Mr. Arthur Miller," announced Howard solemnly, "is officially the owner of 10 new trucks." Applause echoed through the dealership. Arthur held the keys to the 10 trucks, still hardly believing he had succeeded. "When can I take the trucks?" he asked. "Tomorrow," replied Howard. "We'll prepare everything for delivery." "Actually," said Brandon, "how about we deliver them to your community? It would be a wonderful surprise for the residents." "You would do that?" asked Arthur, surprised. "Of course," confirmed Justin. "We want to see the place where these trucks will make a difference." "And I'll come along to do a special feature," said Natalie. "With your permission, of course." Arthur, who had previously refused any publicity, now understood that his story could inspire other people. Yes, you can do the feature. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. As they finalized the last details, Dorothy approached Arthur with a thoughtful expression. "Mr. Arthur, may I make a proposal?" "Of course, Mrs. Dorothy. I retired last month. How about if I came to work with you on this new venture? I can handle the administrative side, the accounting, organizing the routes." Arthur looked at her with immense gratitude. "Mrs. Dorothy, it would be an honor to have you as a partner." "Not a partner," she corrected with a smile. "An employee. I was a partner in a trucking company once, and it worked out very well." The reference to the old company brought bittersweet memories, but this time Arthur smiled. "Then you're hired, Mrs. Dorothy." Brandon approached hesitantly. "Mr. Arthur, I know I have no right to ask for anything after how I treated you, but—" "Speak up, son. I'd like to quit this job and work with you too. I know I earn well here, but I want to be part of something that really matters." Arthur studied him carefully. "Are you sure?" "It won't be easy. If we're starting small, the salary won't be the best at first." "I'm absolutely sure," confirmed Brandon. "What I learned today about judgment and prejudice was more valuable than any salary." "And I'd also like an opportunity," said Tyler. "I can work as a driver, as a mechanic, whatever is needed." "You're both hired," decided Arthur, "but on one condition: never, ever treat any person with disrespect, regardless of appearance or social standing." "We promise," they said in unison. Justin seemed thoughtful for a moment. "Mr. Arthur, I'll stay here at the dealership for now, but I'd like to help in another way." "How?" "I can be the intermediary between the dealership and your company for maintenance, replacement parts, new vehicles when you need them. I'll make sure you always get the best price and service." "That would be very good," agreed Arthur. Anthony, who had been following everything silently, stepped forward. "Mr. Arthur, I have a proposal too." "I'm listening." "I have contacts in the agribusiness sector. I can help secure larger contracts for your trucking company, connect you with buyers who value products from small producers." "That would be fantastic," said Arthur, hardly able to believe so much help was being offered. Joanne, who had remained quiet, finally spoke. "Mr. Arthur, when you arrive at the community tomorrow with the trucks, you'll find a surprise." "What surprise?" "All the families are organizing a fair. No one believes you actually managed to gather the money for the trucks." "A fair?" Arthur looked worried. "But you don't need to spend money on that." "We're not spending anything," laughed Joanne. "Each family will bring what they can. It's our way of thanking you for the years you worked thinking of us." The day's emotions finally overwhelmed Arthur, who sat in a nearby chair, covering his face with his hands. He wasn't crying from sadness, but from an overwhelming happiness he had never experienced before. "Mr. Arthur, are you all right?" asked Dorothy, concerned. "Everything is perfect, Mrs. Dorothy," he replied, raising his tear-streaked face. "More perfect than I ever dreamed." "Why?" "Because when I promised Martha I would buy the trucks, I was only thinking about solving the transportation problem. I never imagined I would find a new family, a new chance in life, people willing to believe in me again." "You deserved all of this," said Brandon with conviction. 5 years of sacrifice, 5 years saving every penny, 5 years honoring a promise. Few people would have that determination. "And now?" asked Natalie. "What are the plans for the new company?" Arthur thought for a moment. "First, we'll organize the transportation routes to serve all the small producers in the region. Then, who knows, we might expand to other communities that have the same problem." "Will it have the same name, Miller Logistics?" asked Dorothy. Arthur shook his head. "No, it will be Martha's Fleet, in honor of the woman who gave me the strength to achieve all this." The name prompted murmurs of approval throughout the group. It was perfect. It honored his wife's memory and represented the renewal of his life. "Martha's Fleet," repeated Anthony with approval. "It has a nice sound, it has meaning." "And all of you," said Arthur, looking at each person who had helped, "will always be remembered as the founders of this new story. Without your generosity, none of this would be possible." Howard checked his watch. "Mr. Arthur, it's almost 6 in the evening. How about we all have dinner together to celebrate? On the dealership, of course." "Good idea," agreed Arthur. "But it has to be a simple place. I'm not used to luxury." "I know a perfect restaurant," said Joanne. "Home-cooked food, family atmosphere. The owner is from our Willow Creek community." And so the diverse group that had formed on that extraordinary day left the dealership and headed to the restaurant. Arthur walked in the middle of them all, still holding the keys to the 10 trucks, still hardly believing the turn his life had taken. During dinner, conversations flowed naturally. Stories were shared, plans were discussed, friendships were cemented. Arthur discovered that Brandon was the youngest of 5 siblings from a humble family, and that he had started working at the dealership to help at home. "That's why I started judging people by their appearance," admitted Brandon. "I thought that those who dressed well had an easy life, while those who dressed simply didn't have money to buy anything important." "And now you've learned that's not true," observed Arthur. "I learned that appearance means nothing," confirmed Brandon. "You were dressed simply, but you carried more dignity and determination than many wealthy clients I assist every day." Tyler also told his story. "My father always told me to respect all people, regardless of their social condition. But when I started working at the dealership, I let myself be influenced by the environment. I started thinking I should only be kind to those who could buy." "What's important is that you've learned," said Dorothy, "and that you'll teach this lesson to other people." Justin, who had been quieter during dinner, finally spoke up. "Mr. Arthur, may I make a confession?" "Of course." "When you entered the dealership this morning, I thought you were just another curious person coming to look at the trucks with no intention of buying. People like that show up every day, and I was irritated because I had lost a big sale last week." "And you took your frustration out on me," concluded Arthur without resentment. "Exactly. But now I realize my frustration didn't justify the cruel treatment we gave you. Nothing justifies treating someone with disrespect." Natalie, who had been discreetly taking notes, set her notebook aside. "Mr. Arthur, your story is truly inspiring. But what impresses me most isn't the amount of money you managed to save, but your capacity to forgive." "How so?" "You were humiliated by these young men, but when they discovered your financial situation, instead of dismissing them, you decided to include them in the sale. Instead of holding a grudge, you offered work. That's rare these days." Arthur thought for a moment. "Natalie, when you lose everything in life like I did, when you spend 5 years working from sunup to sundown to rebuild a dream, you learn that anger is a luxury we can't afford. Anger consumes energy we need to move forward." "But didn't you feel anger when you were betrayed by your partners?" "I did. A lot of anger, especially when Martha got sick and I knew the distress had contributed to it," admitted Arthur. "But I learned that carrying anger is like holding hot coals in your hands waiting to burn someone else. In the end, we only burn ourselves." The wisdom of his words brought a respectful silence to the table. Anthony, with his life experience, nodded in approval. "That's exactly it," agreed the former banker. "In 40 years of career, I've seen many people destroyed not by the losses they suffered, but by the bitterness they carried after those losses." "And how did you manage to overcome it?" asked Brandon, genuinely curious. "With Martha's help," replied Arthur with a nostalgic smile. "She had a natural wisdom for these things. She always said the past is meant to teach, not to imprison." "What a wise woman," commented Dorothy. "She was, and she would have been very happy to see you all here today, participating in this new story. Martha always believed that people are fundamentally good, that they just need an opportunity to show it." "And she was right," observed Joanne. "Look how many people came together to help you today." "Speaking of which," said Anthony, "I have a surprise for you, Mr. Arthur." "Another surprise?" he asked, already unsure how to react to so much generosity. "Remember I said I have contacts in agribusiness? Well, I made a few calls while we were having dinner. There's a supermarket chain looking for organic product suppliers directly from small farmers." "Organic products?" "Yes, and they're willing to pay premium prices for certified products. Your rural community could benefit greatly from this." Arthur was stunned. "How much would this premium price be?" "About 40% more than conventional prices," Anthony informed. 40%, exclaimed Joanne. "That would completely change families' lives." "But it would require organic certification," Anthony explained. "It's a process that takes a few months, but I can help speed it up." "What do we need to do?" asked Arthur, excited by the possibility. "First, check if the farmers in your community already follow organic practices. If so, it's just a matter of formalizing and certifying, clarified Anthony. They do follow them, confirmed Joanne. Most families have never used pesticides because they don't have money to buy them. They've been farming naturally for generations. Perfect, said Anthony. Then you're already halfway there. Natalie looked at Arthur with admiration. Mr. Arthur, in a single day, you not only fulfilled your dream of buying the trucks, but you discovered an opportunity to multiply the community's income. It's impressive. It's almost miraculous, agreed Dorothy. It seems like everything is aligning perfectly. Arthur fell silent for a moment, clearly moved. You know what I think is happening? I think Martha is helping me from above. She always said that when we do good, good comes back to us multiplied. And it really is coming back, observed Brandon. You worked for 5 years thinking only of helping other people, and now you're receiving help from all sides. The dinner continued in a mood of celebration and planning. Ideas were tossed around, contacts were shared, dreams were expanded. What had started as a simple truck purchase was turning into a great network of collaboration and solidarity. When they finally got up from the table, it was past 10 at night. The group said goodbye with warm hugs and promises to meet again the next day for the truck delivery. Arthur returned home, a small rented room on the outskirts of the city, carrying the keys to the 10 trucks, and a feeling of fullness he hadn't felt in years. Before sleeping, he looked at a framed photo of Martha on the bedside table. "We did it, my love," he whispered. "We did it, and much more than we dreamed." That night, for the first time in 5 years, Arthur slept deeply, without the worry of waking before dawn to work, without the anguish of not knowing if he could save enough. He slept with the peace of someone who had kept a promise and discovered that the world still had good people. The next morning, Arthur woke with a strange feeling. For the first time in 5 years, he didn't need to rush to a job. The trucks were bought, the dream was realized. But instead of resting, he got up excited. There was a lot of work ahead, but now it was work that brought meaning and purpose. At 8 in the morning, as agreed, the convoy of 10 new trucks left the dealership, heading toward the rural community where Arthur lived. He was in the first truck, driven by Brandon, followed by the other 9 vehicles driven by dealership employees who volunteered to make the delivery. During the trip, Brandon couldn't contain his curiosity. "Mr. Arthur, what's the community like where you live?" "It's a simple place," Arthur replied. "About 50 families, mostly small farmers, hard-working, honest people, but who've always struggled to prosper due to a lack of infrastructure." "And how did you end up there?" "After I lost everything, I had nowhere to go. A former employee of mine, Samuel, offered me a small piece of land to build a shack. The community took me in without asking questions, without judgment." "That transition must have been difficult," observed Brandon. "It was," admitted Arthur. "Going from a big house in the city to a plywood room in the middle of the woods. But you know what I discovered? That there, people really help each other. When someone gets sick, everyone contributes for the medicine. When a family is in need, the others share what they have. Is that why you wanted to help them?" "That and a promise. Martha always said our duty was to use our talents to improve the lives of the people around us. I had experience with transportation, so it was natural that this was the area where I could contribute." As they approached the community, Brandon began to see small makeshift signs on the trees along the roadside. "Welcome to Martha's Fleet. Thank you, Mr. Arthur. Today is a day of celebration." "Look at that," Brandon pointed out, moved. They really organized a welcome. Arthur smiled, his eyes moist. "These people, they transformed my life as much as I hope to transform theirs." When the convoy of trucks turned onto the dirt road leading to the center of the small community, Arthur was speechless. Dozens of people were gathered along the way, waving little colored flags, shouting and applauding. Children ran alongside the trucks, their faces lit up with joy. "My God," murmured Brandon. "It must be the whole community here." "More than the whole," observed Arthur, recognizing faces from neighboring communities. The news spread. In the center of the small village, a simple but carefully arranged structure had been set up for the celebration. Makeshift tables with wooden planks, decorations made with wildflowers, and a delicious aroma of homemade food in the air. When Arthur got down from the truck, he was immediately surrounded by people who wanted to hug him, thank him, tell him how those trucks would change their lives. Children clung to his legs, women cried with emotion, men greeted him with firm handshakes and looks of deep gratitude. "Mr. Arthur, Mr. Arthur," shouted a child of about 7. "Is it true you're going to take our tomatoes to the city?" "Yes, it's true, son," Arthur replied, picking the boy up. "And not just tomatoes. We'll take everything you grow." Samuel, the man who had offered Arthur land to build his little house, approached with tears in his eyes. "My friend," he said, hugging Arthur tightly, "when you arrived here 5 years ago, I thought I was helping a broken man. I never imagined I was welcoming an angel." "I'm no angel, Samuel," Arthur laughed. "I'm just a man who was very lucky to find good people along the way." "Luck had nothing to do with it," interjected Joanne, who had arrived the night before to help with the preparations. "It was merit. 5 years working from sunup to sundown, saving every penny, always thinking of the community's good." Mrs. Eleanor, the oldest woman in the village, approached slowly with the help of a cane. Everyone fell silent respectfully as she addressed Arthur. "My son," she said in a trembling but firm voice, "I am 83 years old. I've seen a lot in this life, met many good people and many bad people, but I've never seen anyone like you." "Mrs. Eleanor, let me finish," she gently interrupted him. "In all these years, I've never seen someone work so hard for the good of others without asking for anything in return. You are a blessing in the lives of all these families." Arthur's emotion was visible. "You were the blessing in my life, Mrs. Eleanor. You took me in when I had nothing. You treated me with kindness when I was lost. And now you're repaying us in ways we never dreamed possible," she said, touching his face with maternal affection. "May God always bless you." The informal ceremony continued, with several people sharing how the trucks would impact their lives. John, a corn farmer, explained that for 3 years he had lost half his harvest because he couldn't get proper transportation. "With these trucks," he said emotionally, "I'll be able to sell everything and on time. This means my children can study in the city, have a better future." Rose, an elderly woman who made homemade sweets, was beaming. "Mr. Arthur, I've always wanted to sell my sweets at the city fair, but I never had regular transport. Now I'll be able to go every week." The stories multiplied, each representing dreams that could finally become reality. The vegetable farmer who dreamed of expanding his planting, the family raising free-range chickens who wanted to sell eggs in the city, the young man who made handicrafts and never had a way to get them to the urban market. Brandon, Justin, and Tyler watched everything with deep emotion. The dealership employees who had come to make the delivery were also moved by the scene. "I've never seen anything like it," commented one of them. "It's like Christmas, a birthday, and the country fair all rolled into one." Natalie, the journalist, was busy documenting everything, but she also couldn't hide her emotion. "This is the most beautiful story I've ever written," she said to Dorothy. "And the most important one too," replied Dorothy. "How many people will be inspired by this story? How many Arthurs are out there just needing a little push to realize their dreams?" Anthony, who had arrived early in the morning to join the celebration, approached Arthur in the middle of the festivities. "Mr. Arthur, I have more good news," he said with a smile. "More?" asked Arthur, already unable to process so many positive surprises. "I managed to speed up the organic certification process. A specialized technician will come next week to do the initial assessment of the properties." "That fast?" "When I told your story to the people in charge of certification, they were so impressed they decided to prioritize the case," explained Anthony. "They said they rarely see such social commitment in a business initiative." Joanne, who overheard the conversation, approached excitedly. "Mr. Arthur, if we get the organic certification, our income will more than double." "And that's not all," continued Anthony. "The supermarket chain I mentioned yesterday has already shown interest in making an exclusive supply contract with you." "Exclusive?" "That's right. They would buy all the community's certified produce, with guaranteed prices and on-time payment," clarified Anthony. The news spread quickly among those present, causing a new wave of joy and hope. The farmers began doing mental calculations of how much they could earn, dreaming of improvements they could make to their properties and their families' lives. "This means we'll need to produce more," observed Samuel. "And we'll need more trucks too," added John. Arthur smiled. "One thing at a time. First, let's organize the current transport well, then we'll think about expansion." "Speaking of organization," said Dorothy, "I've already thought of a basic structure for the company. We can divide the routes by region, create fixed pickup and delivery schedules, establish fair prices for freight." Brandon approached the group. "Mrs. Dorothy, I can help with that. I know the dealership's logistics system well. And I can help with the truck maintenance part," offered Tyler. "I learned a lot working there." The celebration continued all morning and into the afternoon. Regional typical foods were served, music was played, and stories were shared. The children played around the new trucks, already considering them part of the community's landscape. Around 3 in the afternoon, as the celebration began to wind down, Arthur asked for everyone's attention. "Folks," he said, climbing onto an improvised chair as a podium, "I want to say something important." The chatter ceased. All eyes turned to him. "These trucks aren't just mine," he declared solemnly. "They belong to the whole community. To all of you who believed in this dream, who supported me through these 5 difficult years, who gave me the strength to keep going when I thought about giving up." Murmurs of approval echoed through the crowd. "That's why," Arthur continued, "I want you to know that Martha's Fleet isn't an ordinary company. It's a company of the community, for the community. The profits it makes will be reinvested right here in improvements for all of us." "How do you mean, Mr. Arthur?" asked Rosa. "How do you mean?" "I'll explain," he said. "A portion of the profits will be used to buy more trucks when we need them. Another portion will be used to create an emergency fund for families going through hard times. And another portion will be set aside for community improvements, roads, electricity, the school." The silence that followed was broken by enthusiastic applause. People looked at each other, hardly believing someone could be so generous. "But Mr. Arthur," protested Mrs. Eleanor, "you worked 5 years to save that money. You deserve to profit from it." "Mrs. Eleanor," Arthur replied with a smile, "my profit will be seeing you all prosper. Seeing the children of this community have opportunities that my parents and I never had. That's worth more than any money." Tears flowed freely down the faces of many present. Arthur's generosity was so pure, so genuine, that it touched everyone deeply. "There's one more thing," said Arthur. "I want you to choose a community council to help run the company. 3 respected people from the community who will participate in important decisions." "Are you sure about that?" asked Samuel. "Absolutely sure," Arthur confirmed. "This company only makes sense if it's truly the community's. I'll be the general manager, but important decisions will be made together." The proposal was met with even more enthusiasm. Here was a man who had not only realized his personal dream, but was sharing that dream in a concrete way with everyone around him. Natalie approached Arthur as he stepped down from the chair. "Mr. Arthur, may I ask a personal question?" "Yes, you may." "Aren't you afraid of being betrayed again? Of trusting too much and ending up losing everything once more?" Arthur thought carefully before answering. "I am afraid. It would be a lie to say I'm not. But I've learned that living in fear paralyzes you. If I don't trust people, if I don't open opportunities for others to grow with me, I'll always be alone. And if someone betrays you, then I start over again," he said simply. "I've done it once, I can do it again if I have to. But I'd rather risk being betrayed than live without trusting anyone." The wisdom of his words impressed Natalie, who carefully noted the answer. As the sun began to set, the dealership employees said their goodbyes to return to the city. But Brandon and Tyler stayed. They had brought their luggage and were officially moving to Willow Creek. "Won't you miss the city?" asked Joanne. "Honestly, no," replied Brandon. "I've always lived in the city, but I've never felt as welcomed as I do here. It's like I've found my true home." "Me too," agreed Tyler. "Yesterday I was just another salesman at a dealership. Today I'm part of something much bigger, much more important." Dorothy, who had also decided to stay a few days to help with the initial organization of the company, smiled at the 2 young men. "You'll discover this community has a special magic. People here truly look out for each other. That night, after the fair had ended, and most people had returned to their homes, a smaller group gathered in Arthur's simple house. It was a small but cozy room, decorated only with the essentials and a framed photo of Martha in the place of honor. "So," said Dorothy, spreading some papers on the wooden table, "let's start organizing everything. First, we need to define the routes and schedules." "I have a list of all the producers and their products," said Joanne, taking a notebook from her bag. "I've separated them by product type and harvest season." Brandon studied the list with interest. "We can make 3 different routes, one for perishable products, which need to be transported daily, another for products that last longer, which can be collected 2 or 3 times a week, and a third for seasonal products." "Good idea," approved Arthur. "And the freight prices?" "I suggest we set them well below market rate," said Dorothy. "The goal isn't to make a big profit on the freight, but to help the producers have a better margin on their sales." "I agree," said Arthur. "We'll charge just enough to keep the trucks running and pay the salaries." Tyler, who had been quiet, spoke up. "Mr. Arthur, may I suggest one more thing?" "Of course. What if we organized training courses for the producers? Organic farming techniques, packaging, pricing?" "Excellent idea," said Dorothy. "I know some agricultural technicians who could come give talks. And I can help with the financial management part," offered Brandon. "Many small producers don't know how to properly calculate costs and profits." Arthur looked at that group of people planning the community's future with a feeling of deep gratitude. He had started the previous day as a lonely man, trying to buy trucks, and now he had a dedicated team working on a much larger project. "You know you're changing many lives, right?" he said, moved. "Us?" laughed Dorothy. "Mr. Arthur, the one who changed our lives was you. Yesterday I was a retiree with nothing to do. Today I have a purpose, an important project to work on." "And I was a frustrated salesman," added Brandon. "Today I'm part of something that will really make a difference in people's lives." "We're the ones who should thank you," agreed Tyler. The meeting continued late into the night, with every detail being carefully planned. Schedules were set, responsibilities were distributed, goals were established. When they finally said their goodbyes, everyone had the feeling they were participating in something historic for that small community. Arthur was left alone in his simple little house, looking at the photo of Martha before going to sleep. "My love," he whispered, "I think we've achieved much more than you dreamed. Not just the trucks, but a new family, new friends, new opportunities for the whole community. Thank you for giving me the strength to get here. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out." Now, continuing. The next morning, Arthur woke up early out of habit, but this time he didn't need to rush to a job. For the first time in 5 years, he could plan his day according to his own priorities, and his first priority was to officially begin operations for Martha's fleet. At 7 in the morning, he met with Brandon and Tyler in the center of the community. The 10 new trucks were parked in a row, gleaming under the morning sunlight, like soldiers ready for battle. "Good morning, boss," greeted Brandon with a smile. "No, boss," corrected Arthur. "We're a team. Good morning, everyone." Dorothy arrived a few minutes later, carrying an organized folder with all the plans they had drawn up the night before. "First official day for Martha's fleet," she announced solemnly. "How are you all feeling?" "Nervous," admitted Tyler. "I've never driven a truck loaded with responsibility like this." "You'll do fine," encouraged Arthur. "The important thing is to remember that every product we transport represents a family's livelihood, the dreams of hard-working people." Brandon checked the route they had prepared. "Let's start with the perishable goods route. We have to collect vegetables from 5 farms and take them to the city market." "And I'll take the durable goods route," said Tyler. "Corn, beans, potatoes, 3 farms and delivery to the supply center." Arthur nodded. "And I'll do the scouting route, visiting producers who aren't on our list yet but would like to participate." "Perfect," said Dorothy. "I'll stay here organizing the administrative side and receiving the organic certification technicians who are arriving this afternoon." The 3 men each headed to their truck. It was a symbolic moment, the first day of work for the company born from a dream and transformed into a collective mission. Arthur climbed into his truck cab and felt a deep emotion. It wasn't just a vehicle, it was the symbol of years of struggle, a promise kept, a better future for dozens of families. When he started the engine, the powerful sound of the new truck echoed through the quiet community. Within minutes, children began to appear to wave. Adults came out of their houses to wish good luck. Elders positioned themselves on their porches to bless that historic moment. Arthur's first stop was at Mr. Walter's farm, a 68-year-old man who had been growing bananas for 40 years, but had never managed to get regular transport for his fruit. "Mr. Arthur," shouted Walter, running from the banana grove, "is today really the day it starts?" "It's today, Mr. Walter," confirmed Arthur, getting down from the truck. "I brought this truck especially to take your bananas." "My goodness," murmured the old man, touching the vehicle's new bodywork with reverence. "In 40 years of planting bananas, I've never had a transport as fine as this." "And now you'll have it every week," promised Arthur. "Your bananas will arrive fresh at the city market." Walter had tears in his eyes. "Mr. Arthur, you have no idea what this means. My youngest daughter is in her last year of high school, dreaming of going to college. With the income from the bananas sold at the right time, I'll be able to pay for her studies." "Then let's load these bananas with great care," said Arthur. "Every bunch carries your daughter's dream." Together they carefully loaded the banana bunches onto the truck. Arthur had provided tarps and protective materials to ensure the products arrived in perfect condition at their destination. The second stop was at Mrs. Beatrice's farm, a widowed lady who raised free-range chickens and produced organic eggs. She had never managed to sell in the city because she had no way to transport the eggs without breaking them. "Mrs. Beatrice," called Arthur, "I brought special boxes so the eggs won't break in transport." The lady came out of the small wooden house carrying tray after tray of fresh eggs. "Mr. Arthur, there are 300 eggs this week, all laid yesterday and this morning." "Perfect," he said, carefully arranging the trays in the insulated boxes he had bought especially for this type of transport. "In the city, fresh free-range eggs like these are worth a good price. How much do you think they'll pay?" "At least double what you were able to sell here in the region," Arthur estimated. "Organic eggs have a guaranteed market in the city." Beatrice smiled with a joy she hadn't felt in years. "You know what I'm going to do with this extra money." "What?" "I'm going to renovate the chicken coop and buy more chicks. If there's a market for farm-fresh eggs, I'm going to increase production." "Excellent idea," Arthur approved. "Next week I can already take more eggs." The third stop was at the property of Jordan, a young man of 25 who had recently returned from military service and was trying to establish himself as a farmer. He grew organic cherry tomatoes, but had never managed to sell them because they were a very specific product. "Jordan," Arthur called, "how are the tomatoes?" The young man came running, visibly anxious. "Mr. Arthur, they're beautiful, but I'm worried. Cherry tomatoes are a premium product. I don't know if there will be a market." "There will be," Arthur reassured him. "I've already spoken with some restaurants in the city. They pay very well for quality organic cherry tomatoes." Jordan showed the boxes of cherry tomatoes he had prepared with special care. The fruits were perfect, red, shiny, uniform. "There are 200 boxes," he said, "each with half a pound of selected tomatoes." "Perfect," said Arthur, starting to load the boxes onto the truck. "Quality products like these have a sure market." "Mr. Arthur, can I ask a personal question?" "Of course." "Why are you doing all this? Buying trucks, organizing transport, worrying about our production?" Arthur stopped loading for a moment and looked seriously at the young man. "Jordan, when I was your age, I received help from many good people, people who believed in me when I had nothing to offer but a willingness to work. Now it's my turn to help." "But you lost everything once. Aren't you afraid of losing again?" "I am afraid," Arthur admitted, "but I learned that some things in life are worth the risk, and helping people like you is one of those things." Jordan was silent for a moment, clearly touched by the words. "Mr. Arthur, you can count on me for anything. Anything at all." "Thank you, Jordan. I just need you to keep producing these wonderful tomatoes." The truck continued to the city, loaded with the first batch of products from Martha's fleet. During the journey, Arthur felt a deep satisfaction. It wasn't just the fulfillment of a promise, it was the beginning of a new stage in his life, a stage dedicated to multiplying opportunities for others. In the city, the first stop was at the city market. Arthur knew the place well. During his difficult years, he had sold sweets there every weekend. Now he returned in a completely different condition. "Mr. Arthur," shouted Diane, a merchant who always bought his sweets. "What a beautiful truck is this?" "It's from my new company, Mrs. Diane," he replied with pride. "Martha's Fleet. I brought fresh products from the countryside." "What products?" "Bananas, farm-fresh eggs, organic cherry tomatoes," Arthur listed. "All produced by families I know personally." Diane was immediately interested. "Farm-fresh eggs? For months I've been looking for a reliable supplier of real farm-fresh eggs." "Then you found one," Arthur smiled. "Eggs from Mrs. Beatrice laid yesterday and this morning." The merchant examined the eggs with professional care. "They're perfect. How much do you want per dozen?" Arthur stated the price he had researched, and Diane accepted immediately. "I want 50 dozen now, and you can reserve another 50 for next week." "Deal," said Arthur, barely able to hide his joy. In 2 hours, all the products were sold. Walter's bananas were bought by a chain of juice bars that made natural smoothies. Jordan's cherry tomatoes were purchased by 2 upscale restaurants that paid double the regular price because they were organic and top quality. When Arthur returned to the community in the late afternoon, he carried not only the money from the sales, but a list of orders for the following week. Demand had exceeded supply for all products. "How did it go?" Dorothy asked anxiously when he arrived. "Better than we expected," Arthur replied, with a radiant smile. "We sold everything and already have orders for next week." "Really?" Brandon, who had returned from his route a few minutes earlier, approached excitedly. "Really? And how did you all do?" "Also very well," said Brandon. "The greens were in high demand at the market. The merchants liked the quality and presentation. And I managed to sell the entire load at the supply center," reported Tyler. "They already asked me to double the quantity next time." Dorothy clapped her hands with joy. "First day and it's already a success." "And there's more," said Arthur. "Did the organic certification technicians arrive?" "Yes, they arrived. They're at Samuel's property doing the first evaluation," informed Dorothy. "They said the conditions are very favorable for certification." The good news kept piling up, and Arthur felt he was living a dream. But there was still one important task to complete the day, distributing the sales money to the producers. The first visit was to Mr. Walter, who was waiting anxiously in the banana grove. "Mr. Walter," said Arthur, extending the envelope with the money, "your bananas were a hit in the city." The elderly man opened the envelope and his eyes widened. "Mr. Arthur, this is much more than I expected." "It's the fair price for your work," said Arthur, "and I already have an order for double the quantity next week." Walter held the money with trembling hands. "With this, I can pay for my daughter's college enrollment and still have some left to invest in the banana grove." "That's great, Mr. Walter. Your daughter will be proud." At Mrs. Beatrice's house, the emotion was even greater. "Mr. Arthur, I've never earned so much money with my eggs." "And you'll earn even more when we get the organic certification," he promised. "Certified organic eggs are worth even more in the city." "What do I need to do to get this certification?" "The technicians will come here this week to evaluate your chicken coop and your methods. If everything is in order, you'll have the certificate in 2 months. Beatrice smiled with renewed hope. "I'll start fixing up the chicken coop this very week. I want to have the best possible conditions for the chickens." At Jordan's property, the reaction was total euphoria. "Mr. Arthur, I can't believe I got this price for the cherry tomatoes." "It's the price your work deserves, Jordan," said Arthur, "and the restaurants have already ordered double for next week." "Double?" Jordan quickly calculated. "That means I'll need to expand the planting immediately." "Go ahead and expand. I'm sure there won't be a shortage of market." Jordan looked at the money, then at Arthur, then back at the money. "Mr. Arthur, 6 months ago I was thinking about giving up farming and looking for a job in the city. Today, I have hope of building a prosperous business right here." "That's exactly what I wanted to hear," Arthur said with satisfaction. When he finished distributing the payments, Arthur returned to the community center, where he found a group of people eagerly waiting for news. "Everyone," he announced, "the first day of Martha's Fleet was a complete success." Applause and shouts of joy echoed through the small village. People hugged, celebrated, made plans to increase their production. "And there's one more piece of news," Arthur continued. "The organic certification technicians were impressed with the quality of our products. They said in 60 days we can have the whole community certified." More applause and celebrations. Samuel approached Arthur with tears in his eyes. "Compadre," he said, "in a single day, you change the future of this community. People are making plans they never dared to make before." "They're making plans because now they have real hope," observed Arthur, "and hope is the most powerful thing there is." That night, there was a small impromptu celebration at the community center. Nothing big, just families gathering to share the joy of the new company's first successful day. During the party, Anthony arrived from the city with more good news. "Mr. Arthur, the supermarket chain confirmed interest in an exclusive supply contract." "What do you mean?" "They want to buy all the community's certified organic produce for the next year. Guaranteed payment, above market prices, signed contracts." The buzz of excitement grew even louder. An exclusive supply contract meant financial security for all the producing families. "But there's one condition," Anthony continued. "What?" "They need assurance that the production will be sufficient and regular. They're willing to advance money for infrastructure investment, but they want formal contracts," Arthur thought quickly. "How many families would we need to meet their demand?" "At least 50 producing families," calculated Anthony. "You have about 30 now. Then we need to expand to neighboring communities," concluded Arthur. "Exactly, and that means more trucks, more routes, more organization." Arthur looked around, seeing the hopeful faces of the people who had become his new family. "Let's make it happen," he declared with determination. Samuel approached. "Compadre, I know at least 10 families in the next community over who would love to join." "And I know another 15 in the Valley region," added John. "Perfect," said Dorothy. "We'll organize everything properly. More trucks, more routes, more opportunities for more families." Brandon, who had been doing calculations on a sheet of paper, spoke up. "Mr. Arthur, if we expand to 50 families, we'll need at least 10 more trucks." 10 more trucks? Arthur did the math in his head. "That's another $2 million. "But this time you don't have to gather it all alone," said Dorothy. "With the supermarket chain contract, we can finance the trucks with guaranteed receivables. And I can help with the bank procedures," offered Anthony. "And the dealership can give special terms, since we're customers," added Tyler. Arthur realized that this time he wasn't alone. He had a team, he had support, he had a network of people willing to help expand the dream. "Then let's move forward," he decided. "Let's turn this whole region into one big cooperative of organic producers." The party continued late, but this time it wasn't just a celebration. It was a collective planning session where each person contributed ideas, resources, and commitments to make the expansion happen. When he finally retired to sleep, Arthur was exhausted but radiant with happiness. In 2 days, his life had completely changed. More importantly, he had helped change the lives of dozens of people and was about to impact many more. Looking at the photo of Martha before sleeping, he smiled. "My love, I think your dream is getting even bigger than we imagined. Thank you for giving me the courage to get here." The next morning, Arthur woke with a different feeling. It was no longer the anxiety of someone who needed to save every penny, nor the uncertainty of someone who didn't know if he could realize his dream. It was the energy of someone with a clear purpose and the means to achieve it. The second day of operations for Martha's Fleet started even busier than the first. More producers had shown up wanting to participate, drawn by the news of the previous day's success. "Mr. Arthur," said Bill, a bell pepper producer who had never managed to sell his crop well, "I heard you're taking products to the city and getting a good price." "That's right, Mr. Bill. Do you want to participate?" "Yes, I do. I have 300 bell pepper plants ready for harvest, but I've never had proper transport." "Organic bell peppers have an excellent market in the city," said Arthur. You can prepare your crop and I'll come by tomorrow to collect it. The same scene repeated with other producers all morning. Loretta wanted to sell her pumpkins, Anthony his watermelons, Rosa her sweet peppers. The demand for transport was growing exponentially. "Dorothy," said Arthur, "I think we're going to need to speed up our expansion plans." "Why?" "Because we already have more producers wanting to participate than we have trucks to serve." It was a good problem to have, but a problem nonetheless. Dorothy suggested a temporary solution. "What if we started with a rotation system? This week we transport one group of producers, next week another group, and so on." "Good idea," agreed Arthur. "At least no one is left out." At that moment, an unfamiliar car arrived in the community. Out stepped an elegant, middle-aged man who went straight to Arthur. "Mr. Arthur Miller?" "That's me. My name is Grant Vance. I'm from the supermarket chain that expressed interest in your community's products." Arthur was surprised. "You came all the way here to meet us?" "Yes, I did," confirmed Grant. "When we received the proposal, we were curious to see firsthand how this operation works." "And what do you think?" Grant looked around, observing the movement of the trucks, the organization of the producers, the quality of the products being prepared for transport. "Impressive," he said sincerely. "We rarely see an operation so well organized coming from a community initiative." "We're just starting," said Arthur modestly, "but the folks here are very dedicated." "May I speak with some producers?" "Of course." Grant spent the entire morning talking with the farming families, visiting the properties, evaluating the cultivation methods. With each conversation, he seemed more impressed. "Mr. Arthur," he said when they returned, "I want to make a different proposal than the original one." "How so?" "We don't want just a supply contract. We want to establish a long-term partnership. Our chain will invest in expanding this region's infrastructure, and you become exclusive suppliers not only for our supermarkets, but for our entire restaurant chain as well." Arthur was speechless. "That's much more than we expected." "It's because you offer much more than products," explained Grant. "You offer quality, reliability, social responsibility. That's worth its weight in gold in today's market." "What kind of investment would you make?" "Roads, electricity, irrigation systems, cold storage units, even financing for new trucks," listed Grant. "In return, you commit to exclusivity and predefined volumes." The proposal was too tempting to be true. Arthur asked for time to discuss it with the community, and Grant agreed to wait for an answer. That afternoon, a general assembly was held with all the families in the community. The supermarket chain's proposal was presented in detail, with all its advantages and responsibilities. "Everyone," said Arthur, "this is a unique opportunity, but also a great responsibility. If we accept, we cannot fail to deliver." "What are the risks?" asked Samuel. "If we can't fulfill the contracts, we could lose everything and still owe them money," explained Dorothy. "But if we succeed, this region will become the largest organic products hub in the state." The discussion was long and intense. Each family had its concerns and expectations. Some feared the responsibility, others saw only the opportunities. Mrs. Eleanor, the eldest in the community, asked to speak. "Everyone, I'm 83 years old. I've seen this region go through many hardships, many families leaving because they couldn't prosper here. Now we have a chance to change that for good. I think we should try." "And what if it doesn't work?" asked one of the younger farmers. "If it doesn't work, at least we tried," replied Mrs. Eleanor. "But if we don't try, it certainly won't work." The elders' wisdom weighed on the decision. One by one, the families expressed support for the proposal. Unanimously, they decided to accept the partnership. Grant was called back and received the positive answer with satisfaction. "Excellent decision. I'll prepare the contracts and start the procedures for the investments." "When can we begin?" asked Arthur. "The contracts will be ready in a week. Infrastructure investments start in a month, and the first large orders can begin as soon as next month." It was all very fast, but also very exciting. The entire community was entering a new phase, and Arthur felt proud to have been the catalyst for this transformation. That night, there was a new celebration, bigger and livelier than the previous ones. It wasn't just the success of a company, but the prospect of transforming an entire region. During the party, Brandon approached Arthur with a thoughtful expression. "Mr. Arthur, can I ask a question?" "Of course." 3 days ago, I was just a prejudiced salesman at a dealership. Today, I'm helping coordinate an operation that will impact hundreds of families. How was that possible?" Arthur smiled. "Brandon, do you want the answer people expect to hear, or do you want the truth?" "The truth." "The truth is it wasn't just hard work or determination," said Arthur. "It was mostly luck. Luck to find good people like you along the way. Luck to have had a wife who taught me the right values. Luck to have lost everything and learned what really matters in life." "Luck?" "Yes, luck. Many people work hard and never get an opportunity. Many people have determination and never find people willing to help. I was lucky to find you all at the right time." Brandon reflected on the words. "So what set you apart was knowing how to recognize and seize that luck." "Exactly," confirmed Arthur, "and even more important, having learned that true luck is when we can multiply our blessings by helping others find theirs." The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Natalie, the journalist, who brought copies of the local newspaper. "Mr. Arthur," she said excitedly, "the article about your story came out." She showed the newspaper, whose front page featured a photo of Arthur next to the trucks with the headline, "From Dream to Reality, How One Man Transformed an Entire Community." "Wow," murmured Arthur. "That's quite grand." "It's because the story is grand," said Natalie. "And look, I've already received calls from 3 other rural communities wanting to know how they can replicate your model." "Really?" "Really. There's a community 100 kilometers from here that wants to hire you to organize their transportation, too." Arthur looked at Dorothy, then at Brandon and Tyler. "Are you thinking what I'm thinking? That we can expand the model to other regions?" asked Dorothy. "Exactly. Martha's Fleet can become a network of rural transportation cooperatives." The idea excited the whole group. It was an opportunity to impact not just their own community, but dozens of others across the state's interior. "It would be like a social franchise," observed Brandon, "replicating the successful model in multiple locations. And always keeping the focus on social responsibility," added Tyler. Grant, who had been following the conversation, spoke up. "Our network is interested in supporting this kind of expansion. The more quality suppliers we have, the better for our business." The evening ended with even more plans and dreams being drawn up. What had started as one man's journey to fulfill a promise was turning into a movement that could impact thousands of people. In the following days, the routine at Martha's Fleet established itself naturally. The trucks left every morning loaded with fresh produce and returned in the late afternoon with money and new orders. The local producers were thriving, investing in improvements, expanding their crops. Organic certification was approved for the entire community in record time. The technicians were impressed with the quality of the crops and the dedication of the producers. With the certification, the prices for the products rose even higher, significantly increasing the family's income. 1 month after that first day at the dealership, Arthur was taking stock of the results. Martha's Fleet had 10 trucks running regularly, served 42 producer families, and had generated an average increase of 150% in the community's income. But the numbers didn't tell the whole story. Jordan, the young cherry tomato producer, had managed to buy irrigation equipment and tripled his production. Mr. Walter had enrolled his daughter in college and still managed to plant 1,000 more banana trees. Mrs. Beatrice had built a modern chicken coop and increased her flock to 500 hens. "Dorothy," said Arthur one afternoon as they reviewed the reports, "sometimes I can't believe what we've achieved in such a short time." "It's the power of unity, Mr. Arthur," she replied. "One person alone makes a difference, but a group of people united works miracles." And to think it all started with 3 salesmen laughing in my face at the dealership. "Sometimes what seems like an obstacle is really an opportunity in disguise," Dorothy philosophized. At that moment, a call arrived that would once again change the course of history. It was from Washington, D.C., from the Federal Department of Farming. "Mr. Arthur Miller?" "Speaking. My name is Dr. Brenda Harper. I'm the coordinator of the National Rural Cooperatives Program. We read about your initiative in the newspaper, and we'd like to talk about the possibility of turning your model into public policy. Arthur nearly dropped the phone. Public policy, how so? We want to replicate your model in 100 rural communities across the country, with federal support, facilitated financing, technical assistance. What do you think? It was a proposal that surpassed all the dreams Arthur had ever had, turning his small initiative into a national policy, impacting thousands of families across the United States. Dr. Brenda, I need to discuss this with my team, he said, trying to keep his voice steady. Of course. How about we come visit you next week? We want to see firsthand how your operation works. After scheduling the visit, Arthur hung up the phone in a state of shock. Dorothy, who had followed the conversation, was equally amazed. Mr. Arthur, this is huge, she said. Huge and scary, he admitted. We're talking about a responsibility much greater than I ever imagined taking on. But think of the good it can do, said Brandon, who had arrived in time to hear part of the conversation. Thousands of rural communities across the country could benefit. And thousands of families could have their lives transformed, added Tyler. Arthur fell silent for a long moment, processing the implications of that call. It was a unique opportunity, but also a gigantic responsibility. Do you know what this means? He finally asked. What? The others asked in unison. It means Martha wasn't just dreaming about our community, he said with tears in his eyes. She was dreaming about the entire country. The week leading up to the government representative's visit was intense. The whole community mobilized to show as best as possible how the Martha's Fleet model worked. Properties were organized, documents were prepared, testimonies were rehearsed. On the day of the visit, a delegation of 5 people arrived from Washington, D.C. In addition to Dr. Brenda, there were farming technicians, cooperative specialists, financial analysts, and a press advisor. Mr. Arthur, said Dr. Brenda, we are eager to see your operation. The visit lasted all day. The government representatives visited properties, spoke with producers, followed a collection and delivery route, analyzed financial documents, and evaluated the organizational structure. At each stop they seemed more impressed. The quality of the products, the logistics organization, the satisfaction of the producers, the financial numbers, everything exceeded expectations. In 20 years working with rural cooperatives, said one of the technicians, I have never seen an operation so well structured, born from a purely community initiative. At the end of the day, the delegation met with Arthur and his team to give official feedback. Mr. Arthur, said Dr. Brenda, our evaluation is extremely positive. We want to formalize the proposal to turn your model into national public policy. What would that mean in practice? Asked Dorothy. It would mean $200 million in resources to replicate this model in 100 rural communities in the first 2 years, she explained. You would be the lead consultants, responsible for training and supervising the implementation. Arthur felt his legs go weak. $200 million, 100 communities, thousands of families. The scale of the proposal was almost incomprehensible. And what exactly would our role be? Asked Brandon. You would create a rural cooperatives training institute, explained Dr. Brenda. Community leaders from across the country would come here to learn the model, then return to implement it in their regions. With our supervision, asked Tyler. With supervision and technical support. You would have a team of 50 professionals traveling the country, providing assistance, solving problems, ensuring the quality of the implementation. The proposal was tempting, but Arthur felt a growing concern. Dr. Brenda, may I ask a question? Of course. How do we ensure that all this growth doesn't distort the project, that it doesn't become just another soulless government program? The question took the delegation by surprise. Clearly, they did not expect Arthur to show concern about growth. How so, Mr. Arthur? Our project works because it was born from a real need, from a real community, from people who know and trust each other. How do you replicate that artificially? Dr. Brenda thought carefully before answering. It's a valid concern. That's why we want you as supervisors, to ensure the essence of the project is preserved. But $200 million brings a lot of interests with it, observed Dorothy. How do we ensure politicians and business people won't try to take over the project? You would have total control over the implementation, promised Dr. Brenda. The institute would be independent, with administrative and financial autonomy. Arthur asked for a night to think about the proposal. It was a decision that would change not only his life, but potentially the lives of thousands of people across the country. That night, he walked alone through the community, visiting the places that had marked his journey. The simple little house where he lived, the spot where he had promised Martha he would buy the trucks, the properties that now prospered thanks to organized transport. He stopped at the community's small chapel, where a photo of Martha had been placed by the residents on a sort of makeshift altar. Many people came there to give thanks for the transformations in their lives. "My love," he whispered to the photo, "what would you do? Accept such a great responsibility, or keep everything at a size we can control?" Obviously, there was no audible answer, but Arthur felt an inner peace that he interpreted as a sign. Martha had always dreamed big, always believed they could do more for others. The next morning, he gathered the entire community for an assembly. The government's proposal was presented in detail, with all its opportunities and challenges. "Everyone," said Arthur, "this decision isn't just mine. It will impact our whole community. If we accept, we will become a kind of national model with all the pressure and responsibility that brings." "What are the risks?" asked Samuel. "The biggest risk is losing ourselves in the midst of so much growth," admitted Arthur. "Becoming just another government project, losing the soul that brought us here. And the benefits? The benefits are the possibility of taking our experience to thousands of families who need the same help we needed." The discussion was long and intense. Some community members feared that so much growth would distort the project. Others saw a unique opportunity to multiply the good they had managed to do. Mrs. Eleanor, once again, had the final word. "Arthur, my son, when you arrived here 5 years ago, you were just a broken man needing help. Today, you are the leader of a prosperous community. If God gave you this ability to transform lives, perhaps it is to use it on a larger scale. Do you think we should accept?" "I think we should try," she said simply. "If it works, thousands of families will benefit. If it doesn't, at least we'll know we tried to do good." Unanimously, the community decided to support Arthur in accepting the government's proposal. Dr. Brenda Harper received the positive response with enthusiasm. "Mr. Arthur, you have just made a choice that could transform rural cooperatives in Brazil." "I hope we're doing the right thing," said Arthur. "You are, and you can count on our full support to make it work." The following months were of accelerated transformation. The Martha Institute for Rural Cooperatives was officially created, with Arthur as chairman and CEO, Dorothy as administrative director, Brandon as logistics coordinator, and Tyler as technical supervisor. The first 10 pilot communities were selected, representing different regions and types of agricultural production. Teams of technicians were hired, training materials were developed, and training programs were structured. The first cooperative leadership training course took place 6 months after the government delegation's visit. 20 community leaders from 10 different states came to spend 2 weeks in Arthur's community, learning in practice how to implement the model. "Everyone," said Arthur at the opening of the course, "you didn't come here to learn administrative or management techniques. You came to learn something more important, how to turn dreams into reality through unity and honest work." During the 2 weeks, the participants followed the entire routine of Martha's fleet. They visited the farms to meet the producers, followed collection and delivery routes, attended administrative meetings, and observed community assemblies. But the most important part was what happened in the informal conversations. Arthur shared his personal story, the challenges he had faced, the lessons he had learned. The local producers shared their own transformation experiences. A network of trust and mutual support was forming among people who hadn't even known each other before. "Mr. Arthur," said Helen, a community leader from Texas, "your story gives me hope that our region can also transform." "It can, Helen," he encouraged. "You have excellent products, hard-working people. You just need organization and proper transportation." "But how do we convince the producers to trust the project?" "By example," Arthur replied. Start small with 5 or 6 families. When they see results, others will want to join. That's how we did it here. Johnny, a leader from Pennsylvania, had another concern. What if middlemen show up trying to harm the project? They will, Arthur said realistically. There's always people trying to profit from others' work. But if you maintain unity and transparency, no one can bring down a solid project. The 2 weeks passed quickly, but created bonds that would last forever. When the participants returned to their regions, they carried not only technical knowledge, but a support network and a clear vision of what was possible to achieve. The results began to appear rapidly. In 6 months, the 10 pilot communities already had their transport cooperatives running. In a year, all were certified as organic producers and supplying local retail chains. The numbers were impressive. 1,200 families directly benefited, an average increase of 120% in producer income, creation of 300 direct jobs in logistics and transport. But more impressive than the numbers were the individual stories, like that of Joe from rural Georgia, who rose above the poverty line by selling organic cashews, or that of Anne from Oregon, who managed to pay for her 3 children's college with the income from selling certified acai. "Mr. Arthur," said Dr. Brenda during one of the supervision visits, "the results have surpassed all our expectations. The government wants to expand the program to 50 more communities next year." 50, Arthur calculated quickly. That means 6,000 more families benefited. Exactly. And there's international interest too. The Global Finance Group wants to finance replicating the model in other Latin American countries. The proposal was tempting, but Arthur had learned to be cautious with very rapid growth. "Dr. Brenda, I think it's better to consolidate these first communities well before expanding further." "But why wait? The results are excellent." "Because sustainable growth is better than fast growth," Arthur explained. "I'd rather have 50 communities working perfectly than 100 communities with problems." The wisdom of his approach proved correct. During the second year, some of the pilot communities faced challenges: leadership problems, internal conflicts, market difficulties. The Martha Institute team had to intervene several times to resolve issues and re-establish proper functioning. "IOC," Arthur said to his team after resolving a particularly complicated conflict in a community in rural Kansas. "If we had expanded too quickly, we wouldn't have the time or resources to provide this support." "You were right," admitted Brandon. "Quality is more important than quantity." "And our responsibility doesn't end when the community starts operating," added Dorothy. "We have to monitor, supervise, help whenever necessary." Tyler, who had just returned from a technical visit in the Northeast, brought an important reflection. "Mr. Arthur, each region has its particularities. The model needs to be adapted, not simply copied." "How so?" "In Texas, for example, production is more focused on fruits. In the South, on grains. In the North, on forest products. Each place requires different logistics, different commercial partners, even a different administrative organization." Tyler's observation led to an important reformulation of the program. Instead of replicating the model from Arthur's community exactly, each new cooperative would be developed, considering its own specific local characteristics. "It's as if we were midwives," philosophized Dorothy. "We don't create the baby, we just help it be born healthy." The analogy stuck, and being a cooperative midwife became the informal motto of the Martha Institute team. With this more personalized approach, the results improved even further. The communities developed their own identities, made better use of their local resources, created stronger bonds with their regional markets. 2 years after the national program began, Arthur was assessing the results during an annual meeting that brought together representatives from all the cooperatives. "Everyone," he said to the audience of more than 100 community leaders, "when we started this journey, I thought the goal was to transport agricultural products. Today I realize the goal was always to transport hope." Applause echoed through the auditorium. "Each of you has proven that it's possible to transform realities through joint work, mutual trust, dedication to the common good," he continued. "You are anonymous heroes who are changing Brazil one family at a time." Helen from Texas asked to speak. "Mr. Arthur, on behalf of all the communities represented here, We want to thank you. You not only realized your own dream, but you taught us how to realize ours." "Helen, you are the ones who realized your dreams," corrected Arthur. "I only showed a possible path. The credit is entirely yours." Johnny, from Pennsylvania, also spoke up. "Mr. Arthur, what impresses me most is not the economic success of the cooperatives, but the social transformation. Our communities are more united, more organized, more hopeful." "That's what makes me most proud too," Arthur agreed. "Money is important, but restored dignity is even more important." The meeting continued with presentations from each cooperative, sharing of experiences, joint planning of new initiatives. It was moving to see how each community had developed its own personality, while always maintaining the core values of unity, transparency, and social responsibility. During lunch, Arthur had a private conversation with Dr. Brenda. "Mr. Arthur, there is a proposal I would like to discuss with you." "I'm listening." "The government wants to create the National Rural Cooperativism Award, and we want you to be the namesake for the award." Arthur was speechless. "An award with my name?" "With your name and Mrs. Martha's. The Arthur and Martha Rural Cooperativism Award. It would be presented annually to the most innovative and effective initiatives in the sector." The proposal was an immense honor, but Arthur felt uncomfortable with so much personalization. "Dr. Brenda, I thank you very much for the honor, but I think the award should have a more generic name." "Why?" "Because cooperativism isn't about individuals, it's about collectives," he explained. "If we put personal names, it might give the impression that some people are more important than others." Dr. Brenda insisted, but Arthur remained firm in his position. In the end, they reached an agreement. The award would be called the National Award for Excellence in Rural Cooperatives, and it would be presented annually at a ceremony in Arthur's original community, as a way to honor the place where it all began. The first award ceremony took place 1 year later, during the 3rd National Meeting of Rural Cooperatives. Representatives from across the country gathered in the small community that had become the symbol of Brazilian cooperativism. "It's incredible," commented Brandon as he watched the activity. 3 years ago, we were an isolated community in the countryside. Today, we are a national benchmark." "And international," added Dorothy. "We have delegations from 6 countries here to learn about our model." Indeed, the success of the Brazilian program had attracted international attention. Representatives from Mexico, Colombia, Peru, Ecuador, Bolivia, and Argentina were present, interested in adapting the model for their countries. "Mr. Arthur," said the Mexican representative, "I would like to invite you to visit our country. We have communities that would greatly benefit from your knowledge." "It will be a pleasure to help," replied Arthur, "but I want to make it clear that we don't have a magic formula. Each place needs to develop its own solution." "We understand perfectly," said the Colombian representative. "We don't want to copy, we want to learn principles we can adapt." The award ceremony was moving. 5 cooperatives were awarded in different categories: technological innovation, social impact, environmental sustainability, economic growth, and community integration. But the most touching moment was when Mrs. Eleanor, now 86 years old, was invited to present a special recognition award to Arthur. "My son," she said with a trembling but firm voice, "6 years ago you arrived here with nothing, just a dream and a promise. Today, thanks to your determination, thousands of families have a dignified life. This award is our way of saying thank you." Arthur accepted the tribute with tears in his eyes. "Mrs. Eleanor, this award isn't mine. It belongs to our entire community, to all the people who believed in the dream and worked to make it a reality. That's exactly why you deserve it," she insisted, "because you never wanted the credit just for yourself." That night, after all the guests had left, Arthur walked alone to the small chapel where the photo of Martha remained on the makeshift altar. "My love," he whispered, "we've achieved so much more than we dreamed. Your memory is helping to transform thousands of lives. I hope you are proud." A gentle breeze stirred the chapel curtains, and Arthur smiled. He interpreted it as a sign of approval. In the following years, the program continued to grow sustainably. New cooperatives were created, always with care to maintain quality and proper follow-up. The Martha Institute became an international reference in rural cooperatives, receiving visits from students, researchers, and politicians from all over the world. Arthur, now 70, gradually reduced his operational activities, spending more time in the role of advisor and mentor. Brandon took over as executive director of the Institute, Dorothy became the academic coordinator, and Tyler led the field operations. "Mr. Arthur," said Brandon during a planning meeting, "have you ever thought about writing a book about this whole experience?" "A book?" Arthur laughed. "I'm not a writer, son." "But your story needs to be preserved," insisted Dorothy. "Not just for posterity, but to inspire other people who might be going through similar difficulties." The idea gained traction when Natalie, the journalist who had followed the entire journey from the beginning, offered to help with the writing. "Mr. Arthur, I have all the material from the first articles, photos, interviews," she said. "We can work together on a book that tells not just your story, but the transformation of this entire region." Arthur accepted the proposal, but with one condition. Part of the royalties would be directed to a fund to support newly forming cooperatives. The book, Hauling Hope, The Journey of a Dream That Transformed Rural America, was launched 2 years later, quickly becoming a bestseller. Sales exceeded all expectations, and the support fund secured resources to finance the creation of 30 more cooperatives. "Mr. Arthur," said Natalie during the launch, "the book has already sold 50,000 copies in the first week. It's an extraordinary success." "What's important isn't the book's success," Arthur replied. "It's how many people will be inspired by this story to create their own transformations." And indeed, in the following weeks, the Martha Institute received hundreds of letters and emails from people who had read the book and wanted to know how to create cooperatives in their regions. Each message brought a story of struggle, a situation of hardship, but also a spark of hope. "It's amazing," commented Dorothy while reading some of the letters. "There are people writing from places we didn't even know existed. And each story is unique, but they all have something in common," observed Tyler. "Hard-working people who just need an opportunity to prosper." Arthur felt a deep satisfaction reading those messages. His personal journey had transformed into a national movement and was now inspiring individual initiatives across the country. In his original community, the transformations kept happening. The small rural school had been expanded and now offered a technical high school program in agribusiness. The health clinic had been modernized and offered specialized care. The roads had been paved, electricity had reached all properties, and a broadband internet system connected the community to the world. But the most significant transformation was in the people. Children who 10 years earlier had no prospects for the future were now studying in the city and returning with knowledge to invest in family farming. Young people who would have migrated to urban centers now saw opportunities to prosper in their own region. Elderly people who felt forgotten by the world were now respected as guardians of valuable traditional knowledge. "Mr. Arthur," said Samuel, now 75 years old, during a conversation on the porch of the simple house Arthur kept as his residence, "sometimes I stop to think what would have become of all of us if you hadn't had that dream." "Samuel, without your support, I would never have accomplished anything," Arthur replied. "The dream was mine, but it only became real because I found people willing to dream along. But you were the one who started it. You were the one who had the courage to save for 5 years, to endure humiliation at the dealership, to insist on the dream when everything seemed impossible." Arthur thought about his friend's words. "You know, Samuel, I think what made the difference wasn't the courage to start, but the humility to accept help. If I had tried to do everything alone, I would have failed." "And why did you accept help? Many proud people don't." "Because Martha taught me that pride is a luxury people in hardship can't afford," Arthur explained. "She said that receiving help with gratitude is as noble as giving help with generosity." Martha's wisdom continued to guide Arthur even so many years after her passing. And that wisdom was being passed on to hundreds of community leaders who attended the Institute's courses, creating a network of values that spread across the country. At 72, Arthur made a decision that surprised everyone. he announced his complete retirement from the administrative activities of the Institute. "Everyone," he said during the annual board meeting, "the time has come for me to step away from management completely. You already know everything I could teach, and you have much more energy than I do to move the project forward." "But Mr. Arthur," protested Brandon, "you are the soul of the Institute. How will we continue without your guidance?" "The soul of the Institute was never one person," Arthur replied. "It was the values we built together. Unity, transparency, social commitment, honest work. Those values don't depend on me to exist," Dorothy tried to argue. "At least stay on as an advisor to guide us on important decisions." "I'll be available whenever you need me," Arthur promised. "But the decisions are yours now. I have total confidence in all of your abilities." The decision was respected, though reluctantly. Arthur officially passed the leadership to Brandon, who assumed the presidency of the Institute with a commitment to uphold the founding principles. Free from administrative responsibilities, Arthur dedicated himself to activities he had always postponed. He spent more time with local producers, teaching traditional farming techniques to the younger generation. He organized a group of elders from the community to record the oral history of the region. He created a small community library in the house where he lived. "Mr. Arthur seems younger since he retired," commented Mrs. Eleanor, now 90 years old, but still sharp and active. "It's because I can finally do what I enjoy without pressure," he explained. "All these years I carried the responsibility of representing the community, of being an example, of not letting anyone down. Now I can simply be myself." But even retired, Arthur continued to be sought out by people from all over the country who wanted to hear his story and ask for advice. He received everyone with patience, always willing to share experiences. One of these visits was particularly memorable. A young man of 25 named Derek arrived in the community in a situation very similar to what Arthur had faced decades before. "Mr. Arthur," said Derek with tears in his eyes, "I lost everything in a business partnership that went wrong. I have nothing left, not even hope. I came here because I read your book and thought maybe you could give me some advice." Arthur immediately recognized the desperation in the young man's eyes. It was the same desperation he had felt when he lost the logistics company. "Derek," he said gently, "sit here and tell me your story." The young man recounted how he had started a small tech company with a partner, how they had secured some important contracts, how everything seemed to be going well until he discovered his partner was embezzling money and had put the company in an unsustainable situation. "I lost everything," Derek concluded. "The company, the house I had put up as collateral, people's trust. Now I'm living at my parents' house unemployed with my credit ruined." "And what is your biggest fear now?" asked Arthur. "Never being able to rebuild my life," admitted Derek. "I'm afraid people will always see me as a failure." Arthur nodded with understanding. "Derek, I'm going to tell you something I learned. Failure only exists when we give up. As long as we keep trying, we're just facing obstacles. But how do you start over when you've even lost your credibility?" "One step at a time," Arthur replied. "Accept any honest work, no matter how small. Save every penny you can. Treat everyone with respect, even those who look down on you. And most importantly, never lose sight of your greater purpose." "What greater purpose?" "The purpose of helping other people through your work," Arthur explained. "When you work only for yourself, any obstacle seems insurmountable. When you work to help others, you find strength you didn't even know you had." Derek spent 3 days in the community, following Arthur's routine, talking to people who had witnessed the entire transformation. When he left, he carried not just advice, but a new perspective on his situation. "Mr. Arthur," he said at the farewell, "I'm going back to my city and starting over. I don't know exactly how yet, but I know it's possible." "Of course it's possible," Arthur encouraged. "And when you succeed, send me a letter telling me how it went." 6 months later, Arthur received the letter from Derek. The young man had gotten a job at a technology company, was paying off his debts gradually, and had created a social project for digital inclusion for underprivileged children. "My goal now," Derek wrote, "is to use technology to connect small rural producers with urban markets, creating digital cooperatives. I was inspired by your model, but adapted for the internet age. Arthur smiled as he read the letter. It was gratifying to see how his story continued to inspire new initiatives, each adapted to the circumstances and possibilities of its creator. At 75, Arthur had a revelation that would change his final years. During a routine medical checkup, he discovered he had a heart condition that, while treatable, would limit his physical activities. "Doctor," he asked, "how much time do I have?" "If you take good care of yourself, you can live another 10 or 15 years without problems," the doctor replied. "But you'll have to slow down, avoid intense physical exertion, take medication regularly." The news made him reflect on how he wanted to use the time he had left. He decided it was time to dedicate himself to what he considered most important, ensuring that the values and lessons he had accumulated were preserved for future generations. With Natalie's help, he began recording video testimonies about various aspects of his experience: how to deal with betrayals, how to rebuild trust after losses, how to maintain hope in difficult times, how to lead without authoritarianism, how to grow without losing one's essence. "Mr. Arthur," Natalie said during one of the recording sessions, "your testimonies are true life lessons. We should organize this into a formal course." "Good idea," Arthur agreed. "How about we create a course on values-based community leadership?" The course was structured into 10 modules, each focused on a specific competency: future vision, building trust, conflict management, collective decision-making, effective communication, team motivation, strategic planning, transparent financial management, social responsibility, and long-term sustainability. "We don't want to train technicians," Arthur explained during the course development. "We want to train leaders who know how to unite professional competence with social commitment." The first course was offered in the community itself, with 20 participants selected from community leaders across the country. The format was intensive, 2 weeks of total immersion, experiencing all the concepts covered in practice. "Everyone," Arthur said at the opening of the first course, "you didn't come here to learn ready-made formulas. You came to learn how to think, to question, to adapt universal principles to the specific realities of your communities." The course was an immediate success. The participants returned to their regions not only with technical knowledge, but with a new way of seeing leadership, not as a privilege or power, but as responsibility and service. In the following years, the course became a national reference. Universities began approaching the Martha Institute to establish academic partnerships. International organizations requested the creation of adapted versions for other countries. "Mr. Arthur," said Brandon during a visit, "the leadership course has graduated over 1,000 people in 5 years. It's an impressive legacy." "The legacy isn't the numbers," corrected Arthur. "It's the transformations these people are promoting in their communities." And truly, the course graduates were creating remarkable initiatives all across the country. Cooperatives of different types, social projects, community movements, small businesses with strong social responsibility. It was as if the seeds planted by Arthur were sprouting in hundreds of different places. At 78 years old, Arthur made one last important decision. He created a foundation to ensure the continuity of all the work developed over the decades. The Martha Foundation for Rural Development was structured with 3 pillars: the Martha Institute, focused on creating cooperatives; the Community Leadership Academy, focused on training leaders; and the Family Farming Research Center, focused on developing appropriate technologies for small producers. "Now I can truly rest easy," said Arthur during the Foundation's inauguration ceremony. "The work will continue regardless of any specific person." The Foundation received endorsements from various national and international organizations. The federal government offered permanent financial support. Universities committed to joint research. International NGOs expressed interest in replicating the model in other countries. But for Arthur, the most important recognition came from an unexpected source: a group of children from the local community school. "Grandpa Arthur," said Pete, grandson of Mr. Walter, now 8 years old, "the teacher told us your story. Is it true that you saved money for 5 years to buy trucks?" "Yes, it's true, Pete. And why did you do that?" "To help the families here sell their products in the city." "And did it work?" "Yes, it did. Just look at how your family prospers today. The boy thought for a moment. Grandpa Arthur, when I grow up, I want to be just like you. How so, Pete? I want to help people achieve their dreams. Arthur smiled, his eyes moist. Pete, if you grow up with that desire to help others, you'll already be better than me. That simple conversation with an 8-year-old child touched Arthur more deeply than any official tribute. It was proof that the values were being passed on to a new generation, ensuring the work would continue long after he was gone. End of story. This was a fictional story created to touch our hearts. Now tell us what you thought. Which part of Arthur's journey touched your heart the most? Do you believe small actions can generate great transformations? Share with us your reflections on perseverance and solidarity. Leave your sincere comment, and don't forget to like this content. If this story inspired you, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other narratives that celebrate the strength of the human spirit.